busy week here at Meridian, so we appreciate you taking some time to come and chat with Jamia. And we are so excited to have her here. She's from the Fox team, and I know there's a couple of her team members in the audience as well, so thank you guys for joining us today. A quick reminder, we do have the annual survey going out right now. We'll send a reminder this afternoon, but we do use your feedback to build what the initiatives are that we do each year. So if you get that, please take it. And if you're not on the distro list, you can sign up on dishwomensnetwork.com, and then it's on the member section. So just quick housekeeping there. And with that, this is Jamia. She is going to talk to us about her career today, and then we'll open it up for Q&A at the end. So certainly jump in if you feel the urge, but we'll get started.
All right, thanks for having me.
It's warm. Okay, so to start off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, your job, and what you currently do at Fox?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you again for having me here. And sure, so a little bit about me and my career. I guess I'll start it back and just tell you a little bit about myself, and because I don't think my career path would be what it is if it didn't tell you just a little bit about kind of where I came from and my personal story. So I grew up in rural Oklahoma, and it was just my mom and me growing up, and so my grandparents were my rock growing up. And my grandmother was an English and journalism professor, spent a lot of time with my great aunt, who was also a professor at the local university, and she was also ran for state senator of District 13 in Oklahoma in 1984. I used to help her with her campaign and hand out little mints that said, "Your vote would mean a mint for me." So very small town Oklahoma. But as you can see, I had a lot of very positive female role models growing up. And so then after that, we kind of moved from a small town and went to the big city of Norman, Oklahoma, where the University of Oklahoma is. And when it was time to go to college, I flew the coop. I did not want to go to OU because I grew up like 2 blocks from that campus. And my parents were very supportive of me. And I went to Arizona State University. And but one thing that happened when I was younger is when I was in grade school, middle school, my mom became very sick. And so I had to become very independent and resourceful at a young age. I didn't have any brothers or sisters. It was just me. So between my grandparents, my great aunt, my other family, they were very supportive of me, but I also had to do things myself, and I had to become very resourceful. And I carry that with me today as a leader. I find myself to be, I pride myself on being a resourceful leader, and I challenge my team to be resourceful leaders, to dig deep and get things done. And that's the characteristic that I really look for in people on my team. So, so back to going to college, I went to Arizona State. I knew nobody there. At that time, it was one of the biggest campuses. I think there were 40,000 students there. I think now it's even like way bigger. But had the greatest experience, met some of the best friends of my life there, actually met my husband there eventually. And but when I was there, I interned for the Walt Disney Company, and I also worked for the Super Bowl. You might see a theme here with sports and entertainment. And so I got bit by the bug of sports and entertainment. And then after college, I actually moved here to Denver. And I lived here for 4 years. I worked at Stars, just up the road. It was before they had that campus. I worked like way up the road. It was a long time ago. And so I worked at Stars, and I had a great experience here in Denver. I bought my first car here. I bought my first house here. I got married here in Denver, so I have a lot of fond memories in the city. And then after living here for a while, my husband and I decided to move to Los Angeles and moved to LA, and did not have a job. Luckily, I found one after about a month, and had a job in the entertainment industry. And then after being there for about a year, the company was purchased by Disney. Another theme. And thanks to the laughs in row 3 from the Fox Network's marketing people. So I went to go work at Disney, and I stayed there for a few years in their distribution marketing group. And then I went to work for the NFL, and I was part of the founding team of the NFL Network. And I was really excited to go do that so that I could fulfill my need and my excitement to work for the sports network. And that was very exciting to be on the ground floor there, to have the panache of working for the NFL, but we were in LA and we were sort of this group on the side that felt very like a startup, but obviously having the crest of the NFL. So that was a really, really great experience. And then after being at the NFL for a few years, my mentor and boss from Disney had gone to Fox, and he recruited me and said, hey, why don't you come over to Fox? We got a great thing going here. And he's since moved on, but after over 12 years, I find myself still at Fox and now running the distribution marketing group, which I've been doing for a few years now. So that's kind of my path and what I've been doing for a while now.
So when you say you run the distribution marketing group and these fantastic people, what does that actually mean for people on the other side of the table?
Right. So, so Fox Networks Group consists of 5 core TV brands: the Fox Broadcasting, FX, National Geographic, and Fox Sports, and Fox News. And so I work in the distribution group. So we work very closely with all the distributors of our network content. And so we work with distributors like Dish and Sling, and the many others across the country, all domestic. And we also work very closely with connected device companies who distribute our authenticated television apps. And then, so that's the big part of what we do. And so it's really great. So I get to come out and meet with all of our partners that distribute our content. And on the marketing side, like for example, today, some members of my team are here, and we have got meetings with the Dish marketing folks and the Sling marketing folks so that we can talk about some of the great content that we have coming up this summer with the World Cup, and we can work with the Dish team and the Sling team so we can talk about all these exciting content offerings that we have, so we can figure out how we can merchandise those to best suit the business objectives of the Dish and the Sling teams respectively, so that they can create the best experience forward for your customers. So it's really about relationships and partner marketing, and that's something that I just love doing, finding those win-win marketing opportunities. And we do that by developing relationships, figuring out strategies and objectives, what's really important to you, and how can we match that up with our content across the portfolio. And we have such a wide swath of great content across the portfolio between entertainment and sports and news that we can find those great matches. And so that's the other part of what we get to do is work really closely with our brands. And so I get to work with the heads of our networks and the heads of marketing at our networks really closely to figure out what content are they developing, what's coming up, what are their priorities, what are they looking to push moving forward, how can we support and leverage what they're doing and kind of give it an extra lift to give it that extra boost of promotion and really help move forward everything that they're doing, because I really feel like the people that run our network marketing, to work alongside them is such a rewarding experience because they're best in class. I mean, the people that do the marketing for FX, they're so inspiring and amazing. And then I've got, the guy who runs marketing for Fox Sports, totally different breed, but still amazing and so inspiring in what he does. And so sometimes I feel like I have my head on a swivel because I'm dealing with so many different personalities at all these different networks that it's challenging because they're all, the 5 different core brands, they're all very different, and they're run sort of these 5 kind of mini businesses, because that's how that's the Fox spirit and that kind of entrepreneurial spirit that we have at Fox that I love so much. But it's also can be challenging, kind of bringing everybody together under the portfolio sometimes. Yep. But that's what makes the job interesting and fun. And I think that I can, one of my strengths, I think, is being able to bring everybody together like that and move toward a common goal, which is something that we have to do in distribution because we have to move everybody forward to support the business that helps drive distribution and drives a successful business for our TV, our TV providers.
So certainly distribution is a very large aspect of your job, but managing people and leading a team is another. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that means to you and how you view that responsibility in that role?
Yeah, I mean, leading a team is one of the best parts of my job. I think, the business part of my job is exciting and very challenging, especially in today's world where the TV industry is evolving so quickly. But leading a team is what brings me pride, and I think kind of makes me feel, it just makes me feel good about what I'm doing, that I can help grow somebody's career or give them an opportunity to do something that's going to help move them forward or give them a new opportunity. Especially now when our company is going through a potential transition, I want to I'm trying really hard to focus on them and position everybody in the best light possible for what could be a potential change.
Wonderful. So can you talk to us a little bit about how you view creating an environment where your employees, and perhaps women in particular, can really thrive and be successful?
Yeah, one thing that I think maybe some of you have been reading more about, and that I've certainly been seeing and been reading about, is this idea of unconscious gender bias, and that how women can be judged differently than men, and not in necessarily an overt way, in an overt way, but in an unconscious way. So there was a study last fall that McKinsey and the Lean In organization released, where it said that out of women who asked for a promotion, 67% of them were viewed unfavorably compared to other women, or not necessarily unfavorably, but they were viewed as intimidating or more bossy than women who did not ask for a promotion. And that's all rooted in that we hold women and men to different stereotypes, in that women are supposed to be nurturing and more team-based, where men are expected to be more assertive. And so that's not, in my mind, that's not okay, and that a woman should be able to ask for a promotion, and she may or may not get it, but she should be able to ask for that promotion without being judged in a different way than a man should be able to ask for the promotion. And so whether it's in a staff meeting or a conference room or the board meeting or a boardroom, something that I am trying to be more aware of and trying to support is trying to stomp down those biases and giving women a supportive platform to, whether it is ask for that promotion or stand up and have that opinion, and let them be perceived in a positive light and not a light that perceives them as bossy or intimidating or too assertive or whatever it may be.
Yep. Wonderful. So to that theme and this general idea of executives helping advocate for diversity in the workforce, is there anything particular that you or the company do to promote diversity actively in the workforce?
Yeah, the company, I think it's great that you guys have this DISH Women's Network and you have such a robust attendance, and it seems like you have a lot of these types of speaking engagements, and I think that's so great. At Fox, we have pretty recently, since probably a couple years now, we have what we call employee resource groups, and so it extends like Women at 21CF, Fox Noir, Latinos Unidos, there's a veterans group, and there's a few Fox Pride, and it's so great because they're organized. There's a staff that supports them and gives them resources, and they're seen across. They're seen across, in emails and events that are on the lot, and barbecues, and screenings and different things that are happening, and it's really taken a role, like a role in the forefront of the company in the past couple years, and it's been great to see because it's creating a more inclusive and a more inclusive community that we, quite frankly, I didn't really see before, and I've been at the company for several years. And personally, as a manager of my team, and and someone who's on the senior leadership team of the distribution group, I just think it's really important to create an environment where people feel that they can be true to their story, whatever it is, whatever their diverse background is, or whatever it is that makes them unique. Like, let's just create an environment where people can can be true and their story can be told. If they don't want to tell their story, that's fine. But if they have something that makes them unique and different, I welcome that, and I want others to be welcome to that as well. And I think that if we can create an environment that feels inclusive and where diversity is welcome, then you can hire the best employees and then you can retain the best employees.
Yep. So when we talk about being true to yourself, I think something that you've mentioned to me is authentic leadership, and how do you walk the line between being truly authentic to who you are, and then certainly you're still coming into your work every day. So how do you toe that line, and how do you help your employees do the same?
Yes, yeah, it can be tricky. Yeah. I'm not suggesting by saying authentic self that we come to work and we're like having our midlife crisis in the workplace, or I'm being like that person I was in high school, and no, that would not be pretty. But it's really about authenticity. I view authenticity in the workplace as more about telling your own story in the workplace. Authenticity is rooted in the Latin word to author. So it's about authoring your own story, and it can. It's really about a collage of creating your own story. So starting with your history, your background. You heard me kind of start about like, okay, I came from rural Oklahoma and this happened in my life and da 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 da. It's, you know, what are your experiences? What makes you unique? What's happened in your professional career? Who has impacted your career, both positively and negatively? What have you read? What are your interests? And then it's about identifying what are some things that you want to do better in your career. Are there some skills that you feel like you want to improve upon? Is there a project that you want to get involved in? You know, so continuing to thread that story. And then at some point in your story, is there something in the story that needs to change? Maybe you have reached a point in your career where you're starting to manage more people, or there's a turning point in your career where you might be looking for a new position. So does your authentic story, does your storyline need to change a bit? So, you know, for me, in a year, when if our company does get purchased by Disney, if that transaction goes through, I need to be thinking about, does my authentic story need to change a little bit? And then along the way, have your story edited by your personal board of directors. Like, everybody should have a personal board of directors, some people that you can check in with. Is your authentic story, is it resonating with people that work for you, and is it resonating for people that you are looking to expose yourself to? So that's what I mean by being authentic. And I'll tell you, as a manager, I tend to relate and have a connection with people that have that personal, authentic story, because it builds a connection, something that I can connect with them on. So when I have a meeting with like that junior level person on my staff, and they come into my office to report on something, and there's something unique about their authentic story that I know about, then I can connect with them because I can ask them about that. And so if they don't have that, then there's something that's not resonating for me, and then it's like maybe a little more difficult for me to connect with them when they come into to my office. So I just think it's, you know, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but I just think that something about that authentic story that can, you know, have a hook line for you.
Yep. So you mentioned board of directors, personal board of directors, and you also talked about having a mentor at the very early part of your career who was with you 12 years now at Fox. Can you talk to us about what this board of directors means to you, or how you developed it, and or are those people mentors? Where did you find them, etc.?
Yeah, you have to ask. You really do, and that's part of being like an advocate for yourself, because it's hard to get them, really, because everyone's busy. They've got busy lives at the office and outside of the office, and so you really have to go and curate it yourself. And mentors for me, quite frankly, a lot of my bosses have been men, so a lot of my mentors have been, just by default, have been men. When I was pregnant, I was feeling a little lost on like, how am I going to do this? And my boss at the time said, why don't you talk to, you know, this female executive of the company? And I'm so glad I did. A, because she was in legal and she told me all these great things about maternity leave. And B, she's now she's like one of the most senior level people of entire 21CF, and it's great to have that connection 10 years later. And so it was great that somebody suggested that I go talk to her. He bridged that for me, so that was one where I didn't necessarily have to ask. But it's really important to have, and have them inside the company and outside of the company, male and female, but you really have to ask, because no one's going to do it for you.
So when you think about some of the things that have helped you get to where you are today, what advice would you give to people who are also looking to excel in their career and maybe go for the next level job?
Never burn a bridge, and be a sponge. And when I was in my first job, right when I was in college and coming out of college, right before, I guess it was right around when I was working for the Super Bowl in Arizona, the woman who ran the agency where I was working, she owned the agency in Phoenix, and she's like the female business owner in the 90s, and I really looked up to her. And she said to me, you have to anticipate what your boss needs. And coming out of college, I was like, well, shouldn't they just, it just seemed so silly to me. But I do that now, for my boss. And if you anticipate what your boss needs, then it makes so much sense to me, in that it makes it so much easier for them. And they see that you've taken the extra effort, and you're making things easier for them, and you're showing them that you can do the job without being asked. And when people have done that for me, I treasure it, and I thank them for it, and I'm like, oh, they've got that down. So it sounds, at the time when I was younger in my career, it wasn't really resonating with me, but then I started doing it, and it has really, proven out. And the other thing that I tell people is that you have to do the job before you get the job. And I've done that in my career several times, and it is paid. It is worked, but you can be a little, it can not feel great when you're doing it. But a lot of times you have to do the job before you get the job.
So, when we talk about doing the job to get the job, a lot of the feedback that we get from women is that that's a part of it, and then part of it is advocating for yourself and asking. Have you done that in your career? Mm-hmm. Is this something that you see on your teams? And could you just give us your thoughts around that?
About asking for the job? Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, at some point.
Of course, in the event that you've done some of the work and proved it.
Yes, I have asked for the job, and in some cases I have gotten the job, and in other cases I have not gotten the job. But the most important thing, as someone who has asked for the job, and as someone who's been on the other side of the table, as somebody who has had people come to them asking for the job, is to say why I should be getting, what the value that I bring as to why I should be getting the job. Not that I deserve the job. It's not based on length of service. It's the value that I bring. This is why I should be getting this job. Here are the benefits that I'm bringing to the company. Here's the revenue that I'm bringing to the table. Here are the business objectives that I can help us accomplish or exceed. When I hear that I should be getting a job based on length of service, I am like tuning out.
Yep. So shifting gears into the peer side of career path. Because certainly a large aspect of your job is being the boss, but then as you look back on your career at kind of how you help each other get forward, do you have any advice or any insight into how women can help advocate for each other, or certainly men can help advocate for their female employees and vice versa?
Yeah, and I think I'm very lucky in that I have a great female peer group at my company, and on the senior staff we're pretty even in female to male peer ratio. So that feels really nice when I walk into a meeting, Yeah, so a few examples. I mean, certainly giving each other the floor and showing respect when that person does have the floor, actively listening to, to everybody's ideas, but, certainly, really actively listening when your female peer has the floor, because sometimes I feel like we can get talked over. Celebrating and acknowledging their good ideas, and reinforcing and giving them credit when credit is due in a vocal way. And by the way, when you do get that credit, own it and say thank you, and own it personally. Don't say, oh yeah, it's about the team. I mean, if it is about the team, great, but take responsibility and take ownership of your idea. Thank you. So those are some things that I think, certainly from a peer perspective, something that we have at Fox. We've had a huge baby boom in our department of distribution overall. So we have a working moms brown bag lunch that we do, that is from all the way from assistant to senior vice president, from newborn to 15 years old, and as the senior leadership team that is in those meetings, we help, kind of, if we see some common themes that are happening or some inequities, we kind of help that along informally outside of those brown bag lunches to help the other women in the group that might be having problems.
Great. So probably one of the top questions that, if I didn't ask, somebody would, is this idea of work-life balance, and this can be anything
exist.
Which is also the answer that we get. So knowing that it's elusive, what are some things that you do to stay grounded in who you are as a person, but also stay rejuvenated and motivated at work? We're assuming that you are.
Oh, well, I have just a little background. I have boy-girl twins that are 10, and so I, what I try to do is I try to set a good example for the team, in that I will be, listen, we're all connected all the time, and I'll be the first to stay late if I have to, but I also will run out for the school play if I need to, and then I'll run back to the office if I need to. And I afford my team the ability to do that as well. We have I work in a very demanding group as far as the time and the hours that we have to put in, especially in certain times of year, depending upon what's going on. And so we gotta, I try to set the example in that I like to, we know we gotta work hard. But one thing I also do is I work really hard, but I think and I hope that the guys in row 3 will attribute to is while I work really hard, I like to have fun, and I like to have a good laugh, often at the expense of myself, and so, or Adam. And so if we spend so much time where we work, and we spend that time away from our house or our family or our pets or our parents or whomever it is that we're away from, that we might as well enjoy our time in the office and cultivate relationships there, or enjoy our workplace in some way, somehow. So while I'll be the first to, be on my phone or call a meeting or dive in on a project, I like to have a good laugh, and I like to have fun where I am, because that's just my personality. Yep. So that is one way that I keep myself sane and I keep myself rejuvenated. Yep. I also subscribe to the Headspace app and do a little meditating every now and then, I just try to enjoy the ride a little bit, and and I also tell my kids about what I do, and if I had a good day or if I had a bad day, I don't shield them from what I do. I tell them what I do, especially my daughter. We went skiing this weekend, and I took them to the airport yesterday, and I told my daughter what I was doing today, because I wanted her to understand that Mommy was up here talking to all these people, and I try to make the best out of it. Yeah. And I remind them when I get free tickets, and I remind my son when I get tickets to a basketball game.
So next section, rapid fire. And then after, we'll open up for questions. Okay, kindergarten dream job.
Veterinarian.
But pets? Any pets now?
Yes, I have 2 dogs, both rescues.
Okay,
Bandit, cattle dog.
But no vet.
But
in
no
your
vet,
future.
yeah. And
Okay, coffee, iced or hot?
neither, green tea.
And no crazy Starbucks order?
Nope, just green tea.
Great. What book are you reading?
How to Raise an Adult.
Oh,
Parenting book.
okay. What are you currently watching on TV?
The Olympics.
Okay, which goes into, if I was going to send you to the Olympics today, what sport would you compete in?
Well, today, being the Winter Olympics, I would compete in curling because I think it's the only thing I could do where I wouldn't fall down on my face.
Okay, favorite child of your networks?
That's really hard. It's kind of like the one I'm watching in the moment because it's like who's my favorite kid? The one I'm holding, you know?
Yeah. Okay, fair. Aisle or window seat on the airplane?
Definitely the aisle. I got to get up.
Okay. Bucket list vacation destination?
Right now, I'm fantasizing about like 6 weeks in Europe with my family.
Ooh, sick. Yeah, I'll go.
Like,
I'd be
you know, like
happy.
getting
I'll tag along.
getting an Airbnb and like hopping around.
Yeah.
I don't when I'm going to get that vacation time. I don't know, but
Between deal cycles, maybe. Who inspires you the most?
my kids.
Okay. Do they have any good one-liners, or just generally your children?
Do they have good one-liners?
Yeah, like inspirational quotes from your children.
Oh. None that I could probably know.
Okay, and finally, favorite Olympic sport that you're watching that you don't ever want to compete in?
I am a big fan of Summer Olympics track and field. I used to watch that all the time with my grandfather, so I have fond memories of that.
But no running, in general.
Yeah, and definitely no pole vaulting or anything. I'm not that coordinated.
Okay, great. Well, guys, we'll open it up for questions now. If anyone has any.
Hi, yeah.
Hey, so you talked about the challenges between the 5 different networks and kind of bridging those gaps and silos. What do you do to help bridge those gaps, and anything you can share with us, whether it's internal or even external partners as well? It's something that every company faces. I know I face here.
Yeah, I've kind of created this, like the art of gathering consensus and knowing when it's time to just say this is what we're doing, because you can't just continue to gather consensus forever and ever. So sometimes you just got to cut it off and be like, this is what's happening. But I still value that idea of say, even when you've cut it off and say this is what we're doing, making that phone call and maybe not putting it in an email, but picking up the phone when it counts to say, hey, just want to let you know this is what's happening. Because sometimes I think things can get lost in translation in email.
Cool.
Hi.
Hi there. So I'm in the leadership development team, and I'm just curious, from your perspective, what are the best reasons for somebody to want to be a leader?
The best reasons. Wow. Good question. I think for me, I like the feeling of developing people and getting and feeling like I'm contributing to people's growth and development. And I hope that's what I'm doing. That's the most rewarding part of what I do. And so I think that is that feeling of giving back and contributing to people's growth and development. And being able to do that with your team, being able to do it in an environment like this, any way that you can inspire and grow, because we've all got our day-to-day jobs, and we've got a business to run and a business to grow and things that we need to do. But when it comes down to it, what's important is people. And that's what I think is really exciting.
And a follow-on question to that, what's the most challenging part of leadership?
I don't know. Maybe sometimes just sort of some of the policies that can be put upon when you just want to do things a certain way, but some policies maybe are kind of holding you back. that can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge, but I feel like you just got to kind of work through it, you know. And I have become, you know, I've got a direct line to our HR business partner, and she's fantastic. And I think you just have to embrace that and realize that they're there to help, not to be. It's not bad when they come up on the floor. It's actually good. And I've cultivated that relationship over time, and it's actually quite positive.
So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Hi.
I had a question about you mentioned don't burn any bridges.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's a pretty interesting story behind that. And I was kind of curious if you could maybe share that, maybe see, you know, the path where maybe you didn't have to burn that bridge, or why it was decided that it had to be burned.
Well, then I would be burning it. But no, actually, I just think it's tempting. I actually don't think I hope I haven't. I just think it can be tempting to take the negative path there if you feel like you've been slighted. So I guess I can give I won't give a specific example, but there was a time in my career where I feel like I was wronged in the way something went down at a particular time in my career. And I am still a little bitter about that, and I could have really burned that bridge down. I didn't. On the inside, I'm a teensy bit bitter, but it's not the end of the world. I can rise above it, and I'm glad I didn't, because that relationship is probably going to come back around at some point, even now, 15 years later. And so it's just an example of rising above it, learning from it, rather than burning it down, because you just never know when you're going to need that relationship later on, and it's just not worth it. You know, you never know what was going on in the background, what was happening to that person that day, what the policy was that drove that decision. It's just not worth it, you know. And so I think it's just better to rise above it and take the more positive path.
So I'm sorry in advance, so I'm not going to ask you to speak on this particular subject, just more your perception of as a leader, but sexual harassment allegations have been in the news recently within Fox, especially the last year. And I'm wondering how, as a woman and a leader within said company, that affected you and how you were able to try and modify the culture, at least within your own team.
Yeah.
In regards to that.
Yeah, I read the stories that everybody else did, and I checked in with folks to see how they were doing, and my immediate group was removed from the stories that were in the news, and I think, you know, the company moved in ways that I've personally, I mean, I'm speaking from personal experience, I personally I was gratified, and I was pleased in how the company moved in some of the decisions they made. And I was, you know, woke up and I was like, okay, they took care of that, and they took care of that. And I feel like they moved swiftly, and they did what they needed to do, and under the leadership of James and Lachlan Murdoch. And you know, I feel like they made the decisions that they made. They obviously, I think, you know, they did the due diligence, and they made the decisions that they needed to. And personally, you know, there was a cloud there, and there were some considerations there that I thought about personally, definitely. But how they handled the situation, personally, I was, you know, gratified. I was fine with how they'd handled it.
Cassidy.
A couple of questions ago, you were talking about how it can be tempting to take a negative path, and I think as humans, sometimes it's easier for us to focus on the negative rather than the positive.
Mm-hmm.
And as a leader, when things don't happen how you're expecting to, or you don't reach the performance levels that you're hoping to, how do you keep your team focused on the positive and working together to improve?
Yeah, I'll be honest. I mean, I am guilty of like the negative vent, probably with like my my senior level team, and then I sort of brush it off, and then I go out and I put on the face, you know, because you have to, you got to get out there at some point. But yeah, I think, you know, you just gotta, you also have to be real, right? Like when something was going on in the company, or, you know, there were speculation was happening about, you know, whatever, if it was like when we didn't know if there was the Disney transaction, you got to say something, right? It's in the news, people are reading it. So, but I only knew what everybody else knew, which is what everyone was reading. And so I just, in a staff meeting with my staff of 20 or so people, that's what I said. You know, I just said, hey, everybody, I know there's uncertainty right now. I know what you know, and if there are any questions, if anybody wants to come talk to me, my door is open. So I like to address things head on. I don't want to go too deep into the weeds in a large group, because I think that, you know, then things can kind of go off the rails a little bit. But I want them to know that my door is open, and that they, at any level, anybody can come talk to me, or they can go talk to their supervisor if they have any questions. And then I might do some like personal follow-ups with folks if I can like see some trepidation in their face, or know that they, or I've kind of I keep my ear to the ground too. I try to be, I strive to be relatable with people, kind of say hi at the water fountain, you know, in the kitchen area. It's hard, because what I've noticed is the more senior you get, sometimes people don't want to talk to you, and that's kind of a bummer. You know, or I'll ask people, they're like, how's so-and-so doing, or what's happening? So I try to keep an ear to the ground, especially in times of like when the sexual harassment stuff was going on, or like when the transaction stuff was going on, just so that if I'm not talking to them, then my senior staff is talking to them. So yeah, it's a combination of things, whether it be, and it depends upon the situation, whether it is addressed in a large group, or I have my senior staff talk to their respective teams, because I have 3 VPs that report to me, and so they can handle it into their respective teams, or if it's a one-on-one. But I try to keep an open dialogue in those 3 respective areas, so that we've got that communication flowing.
Cool. Yes?
You talked earlier about kind of the gender bias and some of these unintentional things, and how you were working at a senior level to squash some of that and let women have the same voice. As you were coming up in your career, did you find yourself having to modify your leadership style, you know, to get to the place you are, where you have a voice in what's going on? And you know, did you feel like that was not being true to your authentic self if you did have to modify that?
It's funny, yes. And sometimes I'm like, oh God, yes, definitely. And sometimes I'm like, is this me? Am I being authentic to myself? But that's where I sort of adopted that, like, I am being authentic, but I'm just kind of, I'm changing the script a little bit to adapt to where I am in my career. And what I found is it wasn't that I wasn't being authentic, I was actually just growing. You know, and I was growing myself. And so like I would be in a meeting and I found that I was getting talked over. And I was like, why am I getting talked over? And I was like, and I would just sort of like close down. I was like, oh, I'm just getting talked over. And then I was just like, I'm not gonna get talked over anymore. And so I would, you know, I would just wait for them, or I would talk louder. And so it's a combination of finding your moment, or to say, are you guys done? I'm going to continue now. So there are things, but as I've found, is that has made me more confident in who I am in other situations. Maybe I'm advocating for something for my kids, or maybe I'm advocating for something else at the bank, or whatever, you know. So I did waffle for a while on like, am I comfortable in this role? But what I have found is that it's that altering of the script, and it has made me, I feel like it's just changed. It's how to change who I am. But I have found myself to be more confident in other areas of my life as well.
Allison.
Hey. So you mentioned adaptability. So the
Sorry, I mentioned what?
Adaptability,
yeah.
And the
we talk a lot about here, this obviously the changing landscape. It's been a few years with OTT, but you've been in the industry for so long, moving from cable and satellite to OTT. And what's been the hardest part of that transition, and how have you been able to adapt in that sense?
It actually has not been hard. It's been exciting. And I don't think I would have this job as long as I have if it weren't for the introduction of OTT, and because it like breathed new life into what I was doing, being able to work with like Sling and others, because it was just like a new way of doing business and a new way of looking at the UI and marketing and how we were talking to the consumers. And so for me, it was not, it was exciting, and there was some adaptability in like, oh geez, we gotta like figure out how to get assets and do things differently in that respect. And so there was some struggle there, and I had to adapt how my department worked, because there's a lot more hands-on in certain respects, and so there was adaptability in that sense. But personally, the adaptability, it was like exciting, and I was like, it breathed new life into what I was doing, and I was thrilled. So yeah, so I would just say it was exciting, and but it did change kind of the department structure, but I think overall everyone was like welcoming it.
So next 5 years, Allison mentioned change.
I don't know.
Where do you think we're going to be?
Can you put me in a time machine? And I really don't know, because had you asked me a year ago where we'd be, I wouldn't be able to tell you what happened. I don't know. I think the ride will be wild. So while I don't know, I just say buckle up and be adaptable. Be adaptable. Be open to change. Embrace the ride, and just get ready, because it's going to be interesting, because I don't think any of us could have predicted what the last 5 years was going to be. And so the next 5 years, hopefully things will start to settle in, but I think the first 2 of those years is still going to be everybody finding their place and settling in from different mergers and acquisitions, and probably a few more. And then maybe the last half of those 5 years will be people finding their place in those newly formed organizations. And so spend those first 2 years figuring out what your story is and what you want out of your career, so that when the organizations settle in, you're ready to go.
Yep. Well, great ending point. Good inspiration. If anyone has any extra questions, feel free to stick around. We have the room for about 15 more minutes. And again, thank you for coming. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much.